She never announces betrayal with a confession. She reveals it in fragments, in changes, in the small sentences that suddenly start appearing where honesty used to live. Because when a woman is emotionally or physically involved elsewhere, her behavior shifts before her truth does. Her words begin exposing what her mouth is trying to hide. And the most dangerous part? Most men hear these phrases and dismiss them until the betrayal is already complete. Cheating rarely begins in the bedroom. It begins in distance, in detachment, in emotional redirection. A woman who is investing herself into another man often starts speaking differently long before she gets caught. Her language changes because her loyalty has changed. The issue is not the words Alanat, is the psychology behind them. Because certain phrases repeatedly appear when a woman is mentally leaving one relationship while entertaining another. When a woman repeatedly says, "You're being insecure," or "You're paranoid," in response to reasonable concerns, she is expressing her feelings about the situation. Pay attention not just to the words, but to the strategy behind them. Because in many unhealthy dynamics, this phrase is not used to solve the issue, it is used to shut the sea. Conversation down before accountability can begin. Instead of addressing why her behavior made you uncomfortable, she shifts the focus onto your reaction. Suddenly, the discussion is no longer about secrecy, emotional distance, changed behavior, or suspicious patterns. It becomes about your supposed insecurity. That is how manipulation works. It redirects attention away from the behavior and places you on the defensive. Now, instead of examining what she is doing, you are forced to explain why you noticed it. You begin doubting your instincts. You start asking yourself if you are overthinking, if you are being too jealous, if your concerns are irrational. And the more she repeats that label, the more likely you are to silence yourself just to avoid conflict. But there is a major difference between insecurity and intuition. Insecurity creates fear without evidence. Intuition notices patterns before proof appears. If your concern is based on real behavioral changes, distance, secrecy, defensiveness, emotional withdrawal, then questioning those shifts is not paranoia, it is awareness. A woman who genuinely respects you, even if innocent, will try to understand your concern and reassure you with clarity. She may disagree, but she will not humiliate you for asking. When someone instantly attacks your character instead of addressing the issue, that response itself becomes suspicious. The point is not that every accusation of insecurity means guilt. The point is that when your paranoid becomes her default answer every time you raise a concern, she may be using shame as a weapon to train you to ignore your own instincts. And the moment someone makes you feel crazy for noticing patterns, you should start paying even closer attention. "He's just a friend" is one of the most common phrases used to make questionable behavior sound harmless. And while men and women absolutely can have genuine friendships, the issue is not the label, it is the behavior behind it. Because when a woman repeatedly uses this phrase to defend a man she is emotionally attached to, while dismissing your discomfort, she may be trying to normalize a connection that has already crossed healthy boundaries. Emotional cheating rarely starts physically. It starts with attention, private conversations, emotional dependency, and intimate access slowly being given to someone outside the relationship. She begins confiding in him about things she no longer shares with you. She laughs with him more than with you. She seeks his validation, his advice, his emotional comfort. And when you notice the shift and question it, she quickly minimizes it. "Relax, he's just a friend." But friendship stops being innocent when emotional energy is being redirected away from the relationship. If another man is receiving the vulnerability, time, excitement, and emotional intimacy that should be strengthening your bond, then the title friend does not erase the reality of what is happening. Many inappropriate connections survive because they are protected under harmless labels. A loyal woman does not mock your discomfort when boundaries appear blurred. She understands that trust is maintained not just by avoiding betrayal, but by respecting the appearance of loyalty as well. She will care how certain dynamics affect the relationship and create boundaries that protect trust. The real warning sign is not simply that she has male friends, it is when she becomes unusually defensive over one specific man. When she protects his place in her life more aggressively than she protects your peace, that matters. And she hides conversations, prioritizes him emotionally, or treats your concern as irrational while deepening the connection. She is slowly but surely building a connection with you, and it's only a matter of time before she realizes her feelings for you are real. The issue is no longer friendship, it is misplaced intimacy. Because when someone has to repeatedly insist the connection is harmless, while behaving in ways that clearly make it more than casual, the words often become less of an explanation and more of a cover. When a woman suddenly says, "I need space," it does not always mean betrayal, but in certain situations, it can signal emotional withdrawal that is already being redirected elsewhere. Space can be healthy when someone needs time to think, reset, or process emotions. But when that phrase appears alongside coldness, distance, secrecy, and a noticeable shift in affection, it often means more than simple self-reflection. It can mean she is emotionally detaching from you while growing attached to someone else. People create distance when closeness feels inconvenient. And when a woman is investing emotional energy into another man, your presence can begin to feel like pressure rather than comfort. The affection she once gave freely starts disappearing. Conversations become shorter. Physical intimacy declines. Her warmth fades. Her availability changes. Yet instead of explaining the real issue, she frames it as needing space. What many men fail to understand is that emotional detachment usually happens before physical betrayal. By the time she asks for distance, she may already be mentally disconnecting from the relationship. In some cases, she is not trying to find herself, she is trying to create room for someone else. The key is context. A healthy partner who needs space communicates clearly. She explains what she is feeling, why she needs time, and how she plans to reconnect. Her distance has structure, honesty, and reassurance. But when "I need space" comes with vagueness, emotional coldness, disappearing behavior, and no real effort to maintain connection, it may not be about healing, it may be about detaching. Sometimes space is simply the soft language people use when they no longer want closeness but are not ready to tell the full truth. It creates emotional distance without requiring immediate accountability. It keeps you nearby while they sort out feelings they may already be investing elsewhere. Again, this phrase alone proves nothing. But when a woman who once craved close, and he suddenly pushes you away while becoming increasingly emotionally unavailable, do not ignore the pattern. Because when someone asks for space while acting like they are already halfway gone, the distance may not be temporary, it may be transition. When a woman responds to your concern with, "Why can't you trust me?" instead of addressing the behavior that caused concern, the woman is essentially saying, "I don't know what I would do if I were in your shoes." This statement is a way of deflecting responsibility and shifting the focus away from the issue at hand. She may be redirecting the conversation away from accountability and toward your reaction. On the surface, the phrase sounds reasonable, even hurt, even innocent. But psychologically, it can function as a deflection tactic. Rather than explaining why her actions seem suspicious, she reframes the issue as your inability to trust. That shift matters, because now the conversation is no longer about what she did. It becomes about whether you are flawed for questioning her. Instead of discussing secrecy, inconsistency, emotional distance, or boundary-crossing behavior, you find yourself defending why you felt uneasy in the first place. The focus moves from her conduct to your character. Healthy trust is not demanded blindly, it is earned through consistency, transparency, and behavior that creates emotional safety. A trustworthy partner understands that if something they did cause concern, the mature response is to clarify and reassure, not guilt-trip you for noticing. Trust grows when actions and words align. It weakens when someone expects faith while behaving in ways that undermine it. This phrase becomes especially manipulative when used repeatedly. If every concern you raise is met with, "Why can't you trust me?" rather than an honest discussion, she may be using emotional pressure to make you feel guilty for paying attention. The unspoken message is, "If you loved me, you wouldn't question me." But real love does not require blind trust in the face of troubling behavior. The issue is not whether trust matters, it absolutely does. The issue is whether trust is being used as a shield against accountability. Because asking for trust while refusing transparency is not love, it is control. A mature partner does not punish respectful concern. She understands that trust can be shaken by changed behavior and that reassurance is part of maintaining a healthy relationship. So when someone consistently makes your reaction the problem instead of addressing the reason for it, that itself becomes information. Because people who want trust usually build it, people who want to avoid scrutiny often demand it. When a woman begins saying, "You've changed," especially during periods of emotional distance or suspicious behavior. It can sometimes be more than criticism, it can be projection. Projection happens when someone shifts their own guilt, dissatisfaction, or disloyalty onto you, so they do not have to confront it in themselves. Instead of owning the fact that her feelings or behavior have changed, she creates a narrative where you became the problem first. This is how many people justify betrayal in their own mind. They do not want to see themselves as disloyal, selfish, or dishonest, so they rewrite the story. Suddenly, you are the one who changed. You became distant. You stopped understanding her. You no longer make her feel special. Whether those claims are fully true, partly true, or exaggerated becomes secondary. The purpose is to create emotional justification for choices she may already be making. By framing you as the cause of her detachment, she reduces her own guilt. If she can convince herself that you failed her first, then her betrayal feels less like betrayal and more like a reaction. It allows her to mentally recast herself as neglected rather than accountable. Of course, sometimes partners genuinely do change, and real relationship issues should be addressed honestly. But the warning sign is timing and context. If you've changed suddenly, appears only after secrecy increases, affection drops, defensiveness rises, and emotional distance grows, the phrase may be less about constructive communication and more about blame shifting. A mature woman who feels the relationship is suffering will address problems directly and work towards solutions before detaching. She communicates concerns early, clearly, and with the goal of repair. But someone looking for justification often raises issues only after she has emotionally checked out or after she has begun investing elsewhere. When you've changed is used not to solve problems but to rewrite the relationship history in a way that excuses her behavior, it becomes emotional manipulation, because sometimes the person accusing you of changing is the very person who changed first and needs you to carry the blame, so she does not have to carry the guilt. When a woman says, "I'm just unhappy," that statement, to be honest, but in some situations, it can also become emotional cover for choices she has already begun making. Unhappiness is a real and valid feeling in relationships. People go through difficult seasons, emotional disconnection, and unresolved frustrations. But when this phrase suddenly appears only after secrecy, emotional withdrawal, reduced affection, and suspicious behavioral changes, it may function less as an explanation and more as justification. Often, we have to deal with a lot of information. By the time someone starts repeatedly emphasizing how unhappy they are without previously communicating those concerns constructively, they may already be preparing the narrative that will excuse their behavior. Instead of addressing problems while the relationship could still be repaired, they could work through the issues together. They wait until they have emotionally checked out, then use their unhappiness to explain the distance, the coldness, or even the betrayal that follows. Why? Because people rarely want to see themselves as the villain in their own story. If she can frame herself as deeply unhappy, then her disloyalty feels less like wrongdoing and more like an understandable reaction to emotional pain. The conversation shifts from her choices to your supposed failure to make her happy. But mature people do not use unhappiness as retroactive permission for dishonesty. A healthy partner communicates dissatisfaction before boundaries are crossed. She speaks up while there is still time to fix things. She seeks resolution, counseling, clarity, or closure, not secret alternatives. The danger of this phrase is that it can create confusion. You may start blaming yourself entirely, overlooking the fact that many relationships face unhappiness without betrayal. Feeling unfulfilled does not excuse deception. Being unhappy may explain emotions, but it does not justify dishonesty. Again, the phrase itself is not proof of cheating. Many people truly are unhappy and communicate that sincerely. The issue is context. If "I'm just unhappy" appears only after her behavior has already shifted in suspicious ways, then it may not be the beginning of the problem. It may be the explanation she offers after the real problem has already begun. Sometimes unhappiness is a cry for help. And sometimes it is the story someone tells when they need their betrayal to sound emotionally reasonable. A woman who is hiding betrayal often stops defending herself with facts and starts attacking your perception. When she says you're insecure or you're paranoid, what she may be doing is turning your instincts into the villain. Because if she can make you doubt yourself, she no longer has to explain herself. Manipulation works best when the guilty person convinces the innocent one that intuition is irrational. And many men ignore their instincts because they fear appearing controlling. But there is a difference between insecurity and pattern recognition. If your concerns are consistently met with mockery instead of reassurance, pay attention. Honest people clarify. Deceptive people shame. Then comes the classic phrase, "He's just a friend." Sometimes that is true. But when a woman repeatedly emphasizes that another man is just a friend while giving him emotional energy, she is not just saying that he is a friend, she is saying that he is a friend in a very specific way. Private access, constant texting, and defensive protection. You are no longer dealing with friendship. You are watching emotional infidelity being renamed for your comfort. Many affairs begin not with physical attraction but with emotional dependency. She starts confiding in him instead of you, laughing with him instead of you, seeking validation from him instead of you. By the time she admits the connection matters, the boundary has already been crossed. I need space can be healthy in a balanced relationship, but when it appears suddenly, coldly, and without context, it often means emotional relocation has begun. Because people create distance when they need room to redirect intimacy elsewhere. She stops wanting closeness because someone else is receiving the version of her you used to know. Her affection drops, her availability shrinks, her warmth disappears, and space becomes less about self-reflection and more about detaching from you without yet leaving you. When someone loves you, space creates clarity. When someone is replacing you, space creates opportunity. "Why can't you trust me?" is another phrase that sounds innocent but can be deeply manipulative. Notice what happens here. Instead of addressing suspicious behavior, she shifts the conversation to your trust. She makes your reaction the issue rather than her actions. This is psychological redirection. It forces you to defend your concern instead of examining her conduct. Trust is not blind faith. Trust is built when words and actions align. And if someone demands trust while behaving in ways that damage it, they are asking for obedience, not trust. Then comes projection. You've changed. Suddenly she starts rewriting history. The relationship problems are now your fault. Your energy changed. Your attention changed. Your behavior changed. Why? Because guilt often seeks justification. People who betray rarely want to see themselves as villains, so they create a story where their disloyalty became necessary. If she can convince herself you failed her first, then her betrayal feels emotionally excusable. Projection allows the guilty to transfer blame before accountability arrives. And perhaps the most common emotional cover is, "I'm just unhappy." Unhappiness is real. Relationships go through struggles. But when this phrase appears only after secrecy, detachment, emotional distance, and suspicious changes, it often serves as retroactive justification. She is not explaining the problem. She is preparing the excuse, because many people do not admit betrayal directly. They first build a narrative where their betrayal seems understandable. They want sympathy before truth comes out. They want to be seen as emotionally neglected rather than morally dishonest. The point. That's not that every woman who says these phrases is cheating. The point is that when these phrases appear repeatedly alongside secrecy, defensiveness, emotional withdrawal, and behavioral inconsistency, they stop being harmless words. They become warning signs, because betrayal leaks through language before it arrives in confession. And people often reveal their disloyalty unconsciously through the very phrases they use to hide it. The man who protects himself is not the man who panics at every sentence. He is the man who observes patterns instead of isolated words. He listens beyond what is said. He watches whether actions and language align. Because deception is rarely hidden in one statement, it is exposed in repeated contradictions. The truth is simple. When loyalty is present, communication creates peace. When betrayal is present, communication becomes confusion. And the person trying hardest to make you doubt your instincts is often the person giving you the most reason to trust them.